Detroit, training camp hasn't even officially kicked off, and the Lions are already making moves that have half the internet talking. This is Detroit Scope, and if this is your first time here, welcome to the family. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and we cannot get there without you. So if you like what you hear today, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button before we dive in, because this one's got a little bit of everything. A surprise signing, a Super Bowl ring, and Rams fans absolutely dragging their former guy on the way out the door. Here's the situation. Veterans officially report to training camp tomorrow, which puts us right on the doorstep of the 2026 season. But the front office isn't waiting around to put the finishing touches on this roster, and earlier today, word broke that the Detroit Lions have agreed to terms with linebacker Troy Reeder. The announcement came straight from his agency, Intersports Management, congratulating their client on landing with Detroit. The Lions hadn't put out their own official confirmation at the time this story broke, but that's typical of how this front office operates. They tend to make things official a little later in the day, so expect the team's own post to follow, most likely with a few more contract details attached. Now here's where it gets interesting, and here's exactly why this signing caught so many fans off guard. With Kerby Joseph and Brian Branch both landing on the physically unable to perform list heading into camp, a lot of Lions fans assumed the front office's next move would be adding safety depth. Instead, Brad Holmes went a completely different direction and added a linebacker. Some fans might read that as a sign the coaching staff is completely comfortable with what's already in that safety room. Others might see it as simply addressing the position that had the clearest roster opening. Either way, it wasn't the move a lot of people were expecting, and that alone got tongues wagging across Lions social media. So who exactly is Troy Reeder? And why should Lions fans care about a linebacker signing that dropped the day before camp? Let's start with the resume, because it's actually a lot more decorated than a random late July free agent signing usually is. Reeder is a Super Bowl champion, having won it all with the Los Angeles Rams back in Super Bowl 56. He came into the league in 2019 as an undrafted free agent out of Delaware. And here's the thing that makes this signing genuinely interesting from a durability standpoint. Outside of a shortened 6-game stretch in 2024, this man has played every single game of his entire career. That's remarkable staying power for a player who never got a draft phone call. And it stands out even more when you consider how often this Lions front office has had to deal with injury questions at other positions this offseason. Reeder is entering his 8th NFL season and will turn 32 this September, just after Detroit's Week 1 game. He spent his first 3 seasons with the Rams, capturing that Super Bowl title along the way, before a 1-year detour with the Los Angeles Chargers. After that single season away, he found his way right back to the Rams, where he stayed through the 2025 season. If you're doing the math, that means Reeder has now spent 6 of his 7 NFL seasons wearing a Rams uniform, with just that one Chargers year breaking up the run. Production-wise, his numbers have moved around depending on the role he was asked to play in any given season. His lowest tackle total actually came during that Chargers year, where he posted 11 total tackles. But at the height of his career, the same season the Rams won it all, Reeder played in all 17 games and racked up 91 total tackles, with 48 of those coming unassisted and 43 as assists. That's a real snapshot of a player who has bounced between a rotational role and a more featured one, depending on what his team needed from him in a given year. Now, if you're a longtime Lions fan, none of this should shock you in terms of the connection. Brad Holmes has a well-documented habit of raiding his old team, and it makes complete sense why. Holmes came up through the Rams organization, and he was actually there in the front office back in 2019 when Reeder first signed as an undrafted free agent. So this isn't some cold read on a player Holmes barely knows. This is a front office executive going back to a player he has history with whose habits, work ethic, and football character he already has firsthand knowledge of. When you look at it through that lens, this signing makes a lot more sense than a surface-level headline might suggest. Here's where the story gets a little spicy, though. Rams fans have not been kind on the way out. Comments have been flying across social media from Rams supporters, essentially thanking Detroit for, in their words, taking a bum off their hands. And look, Detroit Scope isn't here to blindly defend every single free agent signing this front office makes, but let's push back on that narrative a little bit because it doesn't quite add up. This is a player who spent 6 of his 7 NFL seasons with that same franchise. If he truly brought nothing to the table, why keep bringing him back? Why let him walk to the Chargers for a year and then re-sign him right back to the Rams roster afterward? That's not the pattern of a player a franchise views as a total non-factor. To be fair, Detroit Scope hasn't broken down the actual game film here. This entire read is based on the stat sheet, not tape, and that's an important distinction to make. Maybe there's frustration among Rams fans about specific plays, specific games, moments where Reader didn't hold up the way they wanted. That's entirely possible, and it happens with every veteran role player in this league. But dismissing a guy who suited up, stayed healthy, and contributed across 6 seasons with one organization as some kind of throwaway signing feels like an oversimplified take from a fan base that's still processing the departure. So what does this actually mean for the Lions heading into camp? Realistically, this profiles as a special teams-focused addition, someone who can also step into meaningful defensive snaps if the Lions need him there. It's not the kind of move that changes the outlook of the season, but it's exactly the type of depth signing that championship-caliber rosters make in late July, when the flashy free agent splashes are long gone and teams are quietly filling out the pieces that could matter in Week 12 when injuries start piling up. There's also a roster math conversation worth having here. Does Troy Reader actually make the 53-man roster? Detroit Scope thinks there's a real path for him to stick, whether that's carving out a role on special teams or working his way into rotational defensive snaps behind the starters. And if it somehow doesn't work out in Detroit, given the pattern of his career, don't be shocked if he ends up circling right back to Los Angeles once again, the same way he did after that Chargers year. That's just been the rhythm of his career up to this point. It's also worth zooming out and putting this signing in the context of everything else happening around the linebacker room and the roster as a whole. This is a group that already includes plenty of established names, and Reader is walking into a competitive situation, not a guaranteed spot. But competition at the bottom of a roster is a good thing. It pushes players, it gives the coaching staff options, and it means whoever does end up on that initial 53-man roster earned their way there through actual camp performance rather than a name on a depth chart in July. Beyond the Reader news, there's a broader mood settling in around this team as camp officially opens. Cutdown day has actually shifted this year, moving from the old Tuesday deadline to now falling on a Sunday, right after the final wave of preseason games wraps up. That's a subtle scheduling change, but it's worth knowing as we track roster decisions over the next several weeks, including how a depth piece like Reader factors into those final calls. There's also a genuine sense of anticipation building for fans who are stepping into the season a little differently this year. Public training camp access for season ticket holders is right around the corner, and for a lot of fans making that trip to Allen Park for the first time, it's a reminder of just how much this fan base has grown alongside the team's rise back into relevance. The excitement isn't always loud right now. It's more of a quiet build, the calm before an 11-game or an 18-game journey that Lions fans hope ends in February. So here's where Detroit Scope lands on the Troy Reader signing. It's not a blockbuster, and it was never going to be. But it's a smart, low-risk, high-character addition from a general manager who knows exactly what he's getting because he was in the building when this player's career started. Add in a Super Bowl ring, a track record of durability, and a special team skill set this roster can use. And this move quietly makes sense even if it didn't dominate headlines the way a bigger free agent splash would have. And that's the story for today, Detroit. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do us a solid. Smash that like button, drop a comment telling us whether you think Troy Reader makes the final 53-man roster. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time to change that. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on Detroit Scope, and every single one of you helps us get there faster. Subscribe, ring that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and as always, go Lions.